In security matters, a privacy doctrine for the cyber age. The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution reads, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, paper, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated." Certainly, the authors did not anticipate a world where every keystroke leaves a digital trail. Our next author argues it's time for a radical change. Joining me, Amitai Etzioni, professor of international affairs at George Washington University, and author of Privacy in a Cyber Age, Policy and Practice. Amitai, let's start with a term you rely on in this book. What is cybernation?
My main argument is that if you look at all the court cases which deal with privacy so far, about 90% of them focus on one question: does the government have a right to collect this piece of information, or should the government be banned from collecting this piece of information? Like, for instance, the famous phone records. The courts did not deal, by and large, with the question, what happens to this information after it's been collected? Who else will be able to use it? Who will be able to combine it with other pieces of information? You think about it, for instance, very quickly. If you go to a bank and the CCTV takes a picture of you, that you are at the bank, you didn't rob it, you leave, it gets erased. That's a collection, right? Most of us are no longer troubled by that, though the civil libertarian used to. But now assume what they're doing in New York. They get the information from all the CCTVs, from all the speed cameras, from the radiation detectors, and soon from smartphones, and compile all this information in their police headquarters. Now, the issue is not that they collected at many points, but they made an almost complete total profile of your life from collecting these various pieces. So our next question, therefore, is to be which kind of combination, or I call it cybernation, we would allow, and where we would say, wait a moment, that's got too far.
It's a good comparison. So my one-time trip to the bank, maybe once a week, now becomes part of a vaster array of data that I don't even know about that's being collected. And you're a sociologist by training, but at times this book reads like a legal treatise. Congress could help to establish a privacy doctrine for the cyber age by reviewing what, by now, has been fairly called an incomplete patchwork of federal laws and regulations, and providing a comprehensive overall ranking of protections based on the sensitivity of the data. Put that passage into context for us.
In effect, we have already some of the building blocks we need for a more updated cyber age privacy doctrine, and that is, we realize that we cannot, it would be not practical and not necessary to protect every single detail about our life. If you want to buy on Amazon a loaf of bread or a yogurt, we should not treat it the same way as information about HIV or cancer or whatever. So in effect, we are moving in the direction of distinguishing between very sensitive information, middle of the road, not so sensitive, and so-called insensitive information. And we already have laws in place, especially on medical privacy, which protect much better sensitive information than, for instance, about regular consumer items. But this has been done patchwork. Something about medical, something about financial, oddly enough, something about if you rent videotapes, that's highly classified, but not what books you check out. So if Congress just could look at all these pieces and fill in the gaps, we could get a fairly decent privacy doctrine suitable to cyber age, especially if they would add that you're not allowed to use insensitive information to guess sensitive information. Just to quickly explain it, if medical information is a no-no, but if I know that you didn't show up to work the beginning of 6 months, each month, that you bought a wig and a lot of vitamin supplements, I'll guess that you have cancer.
Correct.
So we need not only to separate, be more lenient about insensitive information, but ban it be collated. Again, this combination business to reveal about you things which are supposed to be really closed off.
Plus, analysts are connecting the dots and sometimes wrongly doing so by these assumptions. Now, this issue got a lot of mainstream attention over the past 2 years because of former NSA contractor Edward Snowden. You devoted an entire chapter of your book to NSA surveillance. I'm curious, Amitai, what's been missing from public debate on this issue?
I'm really stunned how much we locked into stereotypes which do not allow us to see reality which staring us in the face. We are very concerned about the government keeping dossiers on innocent Americans. If the government would collect information about 200 million innocent Americans, about 1,500 items about each, we, I think, all go ballistic. Now, there are corporations such as Choice Point and Axiom, such as, who keep dossiers on 200 million Americans, about 1,500 items about each. That's the private sector. What people disregard, that these corporations sell that information to the CIA, to the FBI, to the IRS. So the difference between dossiers kept in the private sector and the public sector is one check and one click. So we have to get off this notion that the government is the evil and the private sector is perfect. When it comes to privacy, they are linked these days, and either something should not be allowed or something could be allowed where we cannot make this sub-distinction anymore. One other quick example. Recently, and you yourself indicated our concern with security of our public government computers. This hacking done by, we are told, by China. What we not take into account is how much of our defense, our homeland security, is done these days by the private sector. Much of the analysis, much of the processing of information, much of the military equipment is all built and processed by the private sector. Therefore, if the private sector's computers are not well protected, it will not do if we only protect the government computers. More than that, Congress mandated the government uses no longer the kind of software the government used to make for its computers, but buy them from the private sector, which often makes them in China. So we need to realize in this area, as in the other one, that we have to start treating the whole system, private and public, as basically one piece.
Now, even if Congress comes up with the magic formula, one that perfectly balances privacy and national security, the corporate world will still have an access to an incredible amount of data. Some argue it's time to change how we view privacy. Facebook's founder, Mark Zuckerberg, argues that the social norms that undergird privacy law are obsolete. That is, instead of finding new ways to protect individuals from corporations, individuals should learn to accept changed and, in fact, much lower levels of privacy. Amitai, more than half of Americans over the age of 12 have a Facebook account. They willingly post all kinds of personal information, often in full view of the public. Does Zuckerberg have a point here that we should just lower our expectations of privacy?
It's not a question of lower and higher. It's kind of what kind of information. I don't think that many Americans will want, now or in the foreseeable future, the people to know what political books that they're reading. If they attended a meeting of a far right-wing or far left-wing group, if they have HIV and such. Some may not mind, but the overwhelming majority will think that political, religious, financial, and medical things, they should be well protected. On the other hand, it's true that when it comes to the question what kind of coffee I buy, or even what kind of bicycle, Americans are willing to give up that information for a 25 cents coupon, or just for the convenience of not having to pay cash, but use their credit card. So it's not a question of lower and higher, it's a question of what kind of information.
It's good to get your perspective. It's certainly a thought provoker. Amitai Etzioni, author of Privacy in a Cyber Age. Thanks again, Amitai.
Thank you for having me.